So thank you again for joining us. I'm Ruba. I'm the Senior Customer Service Specialist at Prey, and I'll be facilitating this session. We're delighted to have Emilia Moreno Ruiz present the ecoinvent part of this session. Emilia is Deputy Director at ecoinvent. And for those of you who are not very familiar with the ecoinvent, it's considered to be the most comprehensive and transparent lifecycle inventory database out there. And joining me from the SimaPro side is Paula Bernstein, who leads our database team. And Paula's areas of expertise include environmental product performance, LCA databases, and supply chain sustainability measurement. And finally, covering the software developments is my colleague Michiel, who has been with Prey for over 20 years, almost 25, Michiel?
Yes.
And is a SimaPro product specialist, so we like to call him Mr. SimaPro.
Yes, welcome everybody.
So a little bit about what you can expect in the next hour. Emilia will walk us through the highlights of ecoinvent 3.5, what it includes, what's new, what's updated, and even give you a sneak preview on the next version, ecoinvent 3.6. After that, we'll hand over to Michiel and Paula, and they will delve into the SimaPro 9 release. So what changes have been made to the software, what's new in terms of data other than the ecoinvent, but also we're happy to offer you a bunch of new and updated impact assessment methods. So they will go through that. We will also go through a few things to keep in mind while you're updating from SimaPro 8 to 9. It is a special update this time, so we thought it's good to go over a few things for you. So for SimaPro users with a valid service contract, we started the deployment of SimaPro 9 today. So we send out the update notifications by email, and at this moment we send them out in batches, so not everybody receives the email today. So keep an eye out in your inbox, and yeah, we hope you enjoy this new update. Before I switch things over to Emilia, I'd like to briefly introduce Prey as well. To those of you who don't know us, we put the metrics behind sustainability. So one way we do that is by developing SimaPro, for example. But Prey also plays an active role in a variety of projects and initiatives such as PEF and Social Roundtable, Sustainability Consortium, and so on. And most of you are already, of course, familiar with SimaPro. That's why hopefully you're joining us. So thanks again for being part of our large SimaPro family, which reaches more than 3,000 users via not only Prey, but also our partner network worldwide. So thanks again. And before I take too much time, I'll hand over things to Emilia.
Thank you, Ruba. Thank you for having us, ecoinvent, in this webinar. So I will take my part of the webinar to present you, as Ruba was explaining, what is the content of ecoinvent 3.5. A little bit, I will give you a sneak peek on what's coming in the version 3.6, which will be published in the summer 2019. And I will end up by giving you a short guided tour to the functionalities and amenities you can find in the ecoinvent webpage and in the ecoQuery, which is the way you access the ecoinvent database through the ecoinvent webpage. So let me start by giving you some information, like very general information on the ecoinvent 3.5. ecoinvent 3.5 was released by ecoinvent to the public on the 23rd of August 2018. It's now, with the publication in SimaPro, is now accessible in all main LCA softwares. With the 3.5, we did quite a lot of updates and also addition of new data or even new sectors. And those are the sectors that were affected by those updates or additions. The waste sector, waste treatments and mixes, the aluminium sector, pulp and containerboard sector, hardcore, fish capture and aquaculture is a whole sector that is new, was added, and it's for the first time published in the ecoinvent database. We also make a small electricity update, and as always, we kept on working on improving our supply chains, the connectivity and of the supply chains in the database. So let's start with the first sector on the list. Let's give more details on what is that was updated in the waste treatment sector and in the disposal mixes. So with the version 3.5, we are publishing around 150 new disposal activities reflecting different climatic conditions. The main addition here, the most interesting addition, are those new technologies that you can read here that are modeling more the non-management of waste. They were, of course, not covered in the database before, and that's why I want to highlight them. And they are unsanitary landfill, open burning, and open dumping. And as I said, we will distinguish different infiltration classes, so reflecting different climatic conditions. Additionally, we have added 500 new country-specific disposal mixes for the most common municipal waste fractions. So, for example, waste glass, waste paper, waste plastics, waste cardboard, etc. So, those mixes will be giving you the treatment mix per waste fraction, considering all the technologies that are now available in the database. So not only sanitary landfill and incineration, but also unsanitary landfill, open burning, and open dumping. So they will really give you the technological mix of the end of life of those specific waste fractions. And what is the coverage of those mixes? So the mixes are covering 37 European countries, and they are also covering emerging economies such as Brazil, Colombia, Peru, India, and South Africa. This is really an expansion of the waste management sector in offering you an increased granularity, both in terms of the treatment options, but also in terms of the regional disposal mixes. The aluminium sector has been also overall updated. There's a whole update of the aluminium supply chain, and it's now reflecting the most recent available data, which is 2015 data provided to us by the International Aluminium Institute. And as I said, the update covers the whole supply chain because it goes from updates in electricity production to updates in the primary and secondary aluminium production for most regions of the world. In addition to that, we have added new regional datasets for some activities that were global only, like, for example, anode production or aluminium hydroxide or oxide production. And this is providing, of course, a higher resolution and more transparency, trying to better picture the supply chains. And this is a path that we are currently working again. So with the version 3.6, you shall expect also improvements on the modeling of the trade of aluminium and aluminium products in the European context. Pulp production and containerboard is another sector that was heavily updated. We are publishing the latest primary data on sulfate pulp production, data which corresponds to 2015 and was collected by the European Pulp Industry Sector Association. This is allowing us to offer to you a higher level of granularity in the sulfate pulp supply chains, being now able to distinguish between bleached and unbleached kraft pulp by type of pulpwood, so softwood or hardwood. And similarly, we released with 3.5 the latest data, which is 2014, from the Federation of Corrugated Board Manufacturers, updating the European corrugated board supply chain. There's another sector that has been updated, and it's the hard coal sector. And this sector has been updated and enriched. So because this sector is very central to the database, this update is reflecting in the performance of a huge amount of downstream supply chains, of course. So after revising the entire sector with the version 3.5, we are covering more than 95% of the global hard coal supply chains. And in order to do that, we have added new data on coal mining in India and South Africa, including different types of mines. And for all other geographies, we have updated and consistently implemented the key emissions in the coal mines of all the geographies. And finally, we have added new activities related to import and market data sets, so to reflect the most up-to-date global trade of hard coal between regions of the world.
Emilia, if I may interrupt for a second. I have a question if the new data sets will also be provided in unit version, which are transparent and editable?
Of course. Yes, of course. Yes. Well, everything that has been published in the version 3.5, updates or additions, is always in form of unit process, and then of course system that can be calculated from that. But yeah, sure.
Yes, I think this is one of the main features that our SimaPro users value the most, the ability to be able to really dig down and the transparency of the data that you provide.
Yeah, exactly. As you know, I mean, ecoinvent is a database that is built on unit processes. So yeah, it's rare that we have that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me then now introduce you this new sector related to fish capture and aquaculture that we are introducing to the database and publishing for the first time in ecoinvent. This data was gathered in the framework of the Sustainable Recycling Industries, SRI project, which was funded by the Swiss Ministry of Cooperation, SECO. And it allows us to publish now and present to you data related to capture of anchovy, hake, and tuna. This data in the 3.5 is covering mainly Latin America, but with the 3.6 you will be able to have the capture of hake covered at a global level, including all important regions in the world. In the version 3.5, we are also publishing aquaculture of 2 species, trout and tilapia, reflecting the Latin America situation in that case. In the same sector, we are also publishing the processing of the fish, and this can be the processing of the fish into, for example, fish meal and fish oil, but it's also the processing of the fish as a service. So that means the processing of small fish or big or large fishes by canning, curing, or freezing. So these will provide us services that you can use together with your input of fish. And of course, we are publishing in the 3.5 all the needed infrastructure and their end of lives to support all those activities. And that covers from the vessels that are needed for the fish capture to the nets and floating cages for the aquaculture, and all the way to the different processing plants that are needed for the different activities. As I said, we have made some updates also in the electricity sector in the 3.5. First, I would like to highlight...
Before you move on to electricity, we have a question if you include the fishnet loss and marine plastic pollution in some... Is it factored in any way in the data?
No. This is something we are, of course, working in, how to link this also to our non-management of waste activities. And but this is a link we have not constructed so far, not for 3.5. Okay, so as I was saying, in the electricity sector, I wanted to highlight that we have added some new technologies, modeling electricity production by concentrated solar power, CSP. So we are covering two technologies there, the parabolic throw and the solar towers, and covering regions where this is relevant in the world, such as Australia, Spain, US, or South Africa. So improving their electricity mixes greatly with that. And we are also making some minor updates from 3.4, adjustment to different consumption mixes. So it means that with version 3.5, we are covering close to 100% of the statistically represented global electricity generation, covering 142 countries. We are working on more updates for 3.6, and namely the regionalization of the Brazilian grids. But maybe I will go also, you will also see that in the 3.6 section of the webinar. And finally, as I said, we keep on working on improving the connectivity between the supply chains, between data sets in the same region, and we keep on working in offering a realistic supply chain structure to our users. So for that, in 3.5, we have added new regional markets in rail and road freight transport. We have added new regional markets for chemicals and wastes. And we have worked in improving the linking between infrastructures and services to their consumers in the same region. So all this is working to offer you healthy and accurate supply chains. So if there are no more questions, I will move to the small summary of what's coming in version 3.6. And it's really a short sneak peek, as I said. So for us, version 3.6, which, as I mentioned, we aim for publication during the summer 2019, this version will mean a big step in the coverage of data for emerging economies in the ecoinvent database. We will cover the main economic sectors in those geographies listed here: Brazil, Colombia, Peru, India, and South Africa, with first quality primary data. So let me just summarize quickly the sectors where you have to expect additions of data coming from those geographies. And the sectors are, of course, agriculture and animal husbandry, building materials, electricity. As I said, you have to expect regionalization of Brazil into the grids, and addition to other additions. Freight transport, adding new global models for water and air transport, metals, textile sector, reshaping and offering you a new sector. Tourism, this will be added as a new sector. We will offer you possibility of assess the impacts of a night stay in a hotel. Water supply, adding new activities related to the production, irrigation, and cooling water, and etc. So with that, I will finish my content part and would like to move on a more practical part of this section.
Emilia, I have one question, or actually, I think it's from Costa Rica. Are more countries in emerging economies in Central America being included in 3.6?
No, for 3.6, Peru, yeah, no, Peru, I mean, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, this is in South America. For 3.6, we are publishing really the results of this large project, which was the SRI project. And in that project, the target economies were those. So it's a limited set of countries that were covered. So yeah, those are the countries that were covered for 3.6. Of course, we are working on improving that for 3.7. But let's maybe just refer to 3.6 for now.
Yes, we have another question from Besin from Turkey. She is asking whether you would include different dyeing materials for textile in the coming update. Perhaps not 3.6, but perhaps other one.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the dyeing activities will be modeled as services. The idea here was to enhance the flexibility of the use of those activities. So you can plug the dyeing wherever you want in your supply chain. It's not bounded to the thread or to the fabric. So yeah, it's really a service. So it's very modular for now. And no, we are not covering different dyings. We started at a more generic way.
Okay. Another question. If any data on additives like flame retardants, plasticizers will be added?
In the 3.6, I believe not, but yeah, I'm now. I believe not, but
okay.
it's maybe a very specific question. I can.
Yeah. And another question about textiles. Apparently, cotton yarn was lost between version 2 to 3. Is it possible, or is it expected that it will come back in the update?
Yeah, we're restructuring the whole textile sector. Also adding data at a global level, not only specific data from the regions, but also data at the global level. So I believe 3.6 will have a much better structure with all the needed data sets to construct a proper supply chain. Yes.
Yeah, and a question for myself. Recently, last years, there's been more attention on modeling the use phase in LCA. I know it's a little bit difficult, perhaps tricky, to include that in ecoinvent, but do you plan any modeling in that respect? For example, you have the use phase of your laptop and computer. Can imagine that you do similar things.
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, as you know, it's hard. Being a background database, it's also hard to see where is the use and usability of the data sets you provide. And this is something we have to be aware. But we are working on improving, but not for 3.6, but more I'm talking 3.7, on improving electronics, all of the sectors. So this is something we can definitely look into.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of questions are coming in. So do you mind answering a few more questions?
No, sure not.
Yeah. Any data sets on organic agricultural or animal husbandry in this new version?
Yeah, and not for 3.6. Sorry. Yes, I'm lying. Yes, we will have just cotton, but we will have organic cotton in 3.6.
Okay. And another question is whether you are planning to include more food products apart from agricultural production.
More processed foods.
Processed foods, yes. I mean, can imagine like can be bread, can be I don't know, frozen spinach or something.
Yeah, it's not our. I would say it's not our priority. We are really covering the agricultural sector quite, I would say, completely. But for now, we are moving into processed foods. No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can continue now. If any more questions pop up, we can.
Great. Great. So yes. Okay. So then I will start the last part, which, as I was mentioning, is a more practical. Not so much content, or not at all content-based, but more practical on how can you get all the information, documentation, and amenities that we prepare for you. How can you get them from the webpage or from the ecoQuery? Let's start with the webpage. So that's the webpage. I just would like to attract your attention to 3 sections there, because going to those 3 sections, you already will find the answer to most of the regular questions we get, and I think that Perry gets. So those are the database section, where you will find a lot about version 3, the current release, the previous releases, methodology, system models. Support section, where we give you a lot of options to get your questions very practically answered. And the search function, which is simply a field where you can free write wherever you are trying to find in the webpage. And if we now explore jointly So together, the support and the database section, I have scrolled the menus that you can see when you are on one or the other sections. This is what you will find, and I just wanted to show you, I have sorted out the normal needs of the users, and I am trying to point you where to find the support you need to satisfy that need in each case. Let's try this. So one very common problem is to map the transition between one release and the next. And there are two key subsections that you can explore for that. Is the ecoinvent 3.5 section in the database section, or the document and file section under support. And there are two things that you will find in one or the other. One is the correspondence file, which is an Excel file I'm gonna explore with you in a few slides, that it's mapping activities in one version of the ecoinvent database with activities on the previous version of the ecoinvent database, so you can find your way through the transition from one version to the next. The other document is a change report. This is a PDF document that describes all changes, updates, deletions, corrections, everything that has happened between one release and the next. There's another need, and it's about exploring the content of the database. Do you have this product? Do you have this activity? This is something that you can answer very fast, going and checking the activity overview. This you can find more easily here under document and files. It's an Excel file. I'm going to explore it with you also in a few slides. Finally, if you want to understand system models, the methodology of the version 3, here is where you can go. And also, I propose you, if you want to explore our frequently asked questions, where we try to summarize and gather all the questions you are sending us, or if you want to join our forum, where we have specific questions or to ecoinvent, and where you can also answer to those questions. We invite you to do that, actually. And you can also explore old webinars recordings or all kind of webinars we post under the webinars section. Okay, and after that general introduction, let's go and explore together the correspondence file. The correspondence file, as I was saying, is a mapping file. This is the mapping file that tells you what was in 3.4 now is what is that in 3.5. It's a big Excel. It has a README section that I encourage you to read before doing anything to it. And I just made a screenshot, and I'm gonna use this example that you see in the screenshot to show you the functionalities of the correspondence file. First, in this document, you can find the coordinates of the older version, version 3.4 on the left, of the newer version, version 3.5 on the right. You can see the coordinates of all activities, activity name, the geography, product name, and unit. Here I have made really a tidy, short version of the correspondence file. We only see activity name and geography. You have then other columns. So what we will tell you in the correspondence file is, first of all, if one activity between the previous version and the newer version has not changed the name and the geography, then we will tell you this is a direct match. And this is something that probably Pre or SimaPro can convert very easily in your process, in your projects. So they will make evolve the activity in 3.4 to the activity in 3.5 because there's a direct one-to-one match. But this is not always the case. And those you can see here in this column. In this column, we will tell you there's no a single direct match available. Here we will tell you how many activities are being replaced or are replaced, depending on whether we're talking about merging or splitting. And here we will give you explanations and comments. So let's go to our example. Our example is the aluminium hydroxide production, which was a global activity in version 3.4. And now, if you read here, it has been split into the different regions that were provided by the International Aluminium Institute. So that's now you understand. It was one activity. It's now replaced by 7. So what we will give you in this correspondence file is the scenario of replacement that we can find more likely. Of course, we don't know, and also Prey doesn't know if this replacement is the one that fits your needs. In our case, the scenario we're using is saying, okay, you had a global activity, and now we are replacing this global activity with seven regions. We're going to tell you how to get a global coverage using the 7 regions. For that, we are using the relative production volumes, and we are telling you if you were having a global coverage with this global activity, you can now get the same using this combination of regional activities. That's of course valid if you were using this global activity needing a global coverage. But maybe for you now, the fit is not to a global coverage, but maybe what you were needing is a Chinese activity or a North American activity. And in that case, the replacement scenario we're giving you is not the one you need. So that's why SimaPro or Prey cannot give you always a replacement, and that's why you will have those obsolete data sets appearing. And if you come and check the correspondence file, you could solve those obsolete data sets by choosing either the replacement scenario that we give you, or by choosing another kind of replacement that better fits your needs in your project.
Emilia, there is a question regarding these global activities. So why isn't, for example, the global activity replaced by the global market containing, for example, a number of sub-activities?
Yeah, it's, as I was saying, it's sometimes it's hard to give a replacement option, and the premise we use is that we will replace with the most similar situation. So in that case, we were getting rid of an activity that was a global activity because we were replacing it with the regionalized versions. So we were replacing it with 7 activities. So the most similar situation to the one we had in version 3.4 is replacing the global by the 7 transforming activities. Of course, if you go directly to the market, you obtain the same thing. Sure, but replacing transforming activity by transforming activity, this is the most similar situation if we compare one version to the next. And that's what we try to do.
Okay, thank you for explaining. I'd just like to point out we're receiving a large number of questions, so we'll try to add to answer everybody's questions at the end, or otherwise we'll get back to you by email. But keep them coming. Thank you.
Okay, then I move on to the other file. I wanted to give you a short guidance, let's say, which is the activity overview. Again, this is a big Excel file, and it has a README. I encourage you to actually read it. And then here, those are screenshots of this large file. And the activity overview is the place where you can explore, search, and find the activity or product that you're looking for. So you can explore the content of the database. And you can do that at different levels. You can search by activity name, geography, but also ISIC classification. The ISIC classification is the system that the United Nations uses to classify economic activities, and that's the one we use in ecoinvent. So if you are looking for an activity, but you have a more sectorial perspective, you can use that. Maybe that's helpful for you. Similarly, you can search a specific product using the product name or using the CPC classification, which is the United Nations classification for products. And here you will say more at the level of product groups, and it's maybe good for the specific search you're doing. And just very quickly, the activity overview includes also the classification of that product in the APO system model and in the cutoff system model. So that helps you already understanding probably some results you're gonna get when looking at a specific product. Okay, then let's go quickly to the ecoQuery. As I said, the ecoQuery is the way you can access the ecoinvent database through the ecoinvent webpage, and it's here. You do it on the top right corner. And why going and accessing the ecoQuery? Well, there are a few reasons. One is because it's the only place where you can have access to the undefined database. The undefined database gives you access to the unit processes before allocation, before substitution, and without suppliers, so before linking. And you also have access to all the versions of the ecoinvent database. It's the only place where you can enjoy the full documentation on the dataset, the properties of all products, comments at the product level or exchange level, formulas, etc. And you can download dataset PDF reports, and you can also download background reports or LCI tools. This, again, here is the only place where you can download background reports or LCI tools. That's how you log in to the version 3 or to older versions, older as version 1. And you have access, as I said, to the undefined database. Just as a reminder, you have access to this database also as a guest. And the undefined database is giving you access to the unit processes, gate-to-gate activities before allocation substitution and without linking to suppliers. You can also download from here the dataset PDF reports. You have access to the system models, the 3 of them at the level of unit process, a system, LCI or LCIA, and again, the dataset PDF reports. What is that you get more if you access the datasets in the ecoQuery? Well, you get the full documentation on the datasets, so you get the full general comment, eventually with pictures, tables, graphs, etc. You will get, at the level of exchanges, you will get a comment per exchange. Also, if there are mathematical relationships, you will see them there. You will see specific sources. If the exchange has a specific source, it will be also listed here. And very importantly, you will have access to the properties, which are not supported anywhere, also not on the PDF reports. So, for example, you have access to the mass-related properties in that case, like content, dry mass, water mass, etc. The price and the true value. True value allows you to calculate the allocation key. So properties are very interesting for you as users. And then, as I said, from the undefined database and the system models, and also from SimaPro directly, you can download the dataset PDF reports. Those are PDF reports specific to each dataset. This is an overview. Very quickly, you have then a downloadable access to the documentation in the dataset, like the general comment, again here with pictures and graphs and so, sources of the data, and all the full inventory, all flows with the comment and source, but not the properties. And just to wrap up, there are 2 sections in the ecoQuery which give you also access to information that you cannot find anywhere else. One is the files section, where you have LCI and LCIA matrices and the supporting information for LCIA method implementation. And under reports section, you can find all the sectorial reports we publish, agriculture, electricity, etc., and 2 Excel files that offer you the whole market composition of the whole database. So very interesting, especially the electricity one, because it's distinguishing between the technologies, but also aggregating together different technologies belonging to the same family, like nuclear or photovoltaics, wind, etc. And with that, I've been finished with my presentation, but I'm happy to take further questions if there's time, of course.
Thanks, Emilia. Yeah, I'll leave the questions to the end if we have time.
Yep.
I'd like to pass it on to Paula.
Yep. I'm sorry. Yep.
Yes, great.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you for that informative overview on ecoinvent. We are going to take a closer look on what else is new in SimaPro 9 besides ecoinvent. So first I'm going to let my colleague Michiel go over the software updates with you, and then we'll go over what else is new in regard to database and methods. And then I can also show you a few things in SimaPro itself before we move on to the final Q&A. Take it away, Michiel. I think you're still muted. Michiel, I think you're still muted if you want to.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
There you go.
I'm back. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Paula, for your introduction. And thank you, Emilia, as well. SimaPro 9, we've been working on it for some time. The most software changes are actually on the back end, under the hood, so you won't see much, but we finally did a much needed database system update. Our database system is based on Nexus. We moved from Nexus 2 to Nexus 4. It does not mean yet you see any changes in the way you model or you see any changes in the database. We needed it to increase the performance of the database and also to make it future-proof. And later on, Paula will tell you a little bit more about the conversion of existing databases, because yeah, a conversion is needed from your database from Nexus 2 to Nexus 4. One important new feature for the faculty and classroom licenses is that we enabled the library switch in the calculation setups for these SimaPro versions. The library switch can, let's say, on the fly switch between unit and system processes of ecoinvent. You can imagine that when you calculate ecoinvent unit processes, it's now a core of something like 12,000 processes, which can take quite some time to calculate. When you switch to system processes, it's much faster. The disadvantage is, of course, that you lose some transparency in the lack of details. But anyway, we hope that it definitely helps to solve some performance issues in the classroom license, for example. For the rest, there have been no major changes in the system requirements. If I can go to the next slides. Of course, we also worked on other improvements and fixes. A number of you reported problems reading Excel files. That's solved. We think that Microsoft has some internal updates in the XLSX models in the latest versions. We were able to solve that. There was a small bug in registering SimaPro as a COM service. That was only in the developer version. That's solved. One request that many of you asked, how can I delete multiple projects? That's finally possible now. So that's a relief for many people. One thing which is, hopefully giving us less support, it's a clearer progress message during import of databases. Also with this update to ecoinvent 3.5, you have to import a lot of data, and SimaPro may seem unresponsive. That sometimes leads to people killing the session, and that corrupts the database. And with this message, we hope that people are a little bit more patient. I agree that updates can take a long time, a very long time. Unfortunately, it's the way that our database system is set up, is working, and we cannot really change it to make it updating very quickly. Bear in mind that ecoinvent has something like 15,000 processes times 6. It's not something you can expect to work in a few seconds or minutes. Some other minor changes, notification about the parameter names. You could enter special characters which were not really mentioned in the messaging. Because we have a new database system, it's important for those people that run it as a standalone application that you need administrator rights, or you need to run it as administrator when using it as a standalone application. For the future, we will be working on further improvement of speed and stability. That's definitely on the radar for the next months. And for the rest of the year, we still have to decide what's the roadmap. There's a lot of requests from many people, so we have to set priorities. We cannot accommodate everything. So that's the software part for now. I now go back to Paula, because she can explain about the new data and method, especially the methods in SimaPro.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Michiel. So as a general overview, we have 4 new methods included in this release. Those include the EF adapted method, the environmental prices method, EPD 2018, and a cumulative energy demand lower heating value method. Overall, we have 3 updated methods. The recipe 2016 is a larger update, and cumulative energy demand and aware were more minor updates. And I'm going to discuss each of these in a little more detail in the next few slides. On the database side of things, of course, ecoinvent was updated to 3.5, which was a big update for us. So you already got a general overview of what's new there. And then the industry data library was also updated, specifically the world steel data. We have a steel rod process, and then also a few flows were corrected by world steel. So we made those changes. So the new EF method is based on the method for the environmental footprint for the European Commission. The official method is designed to be used with the PEF data only, so that has a special list of flows to be used only with the PEF data. So that's why this version is called the adapted version, because it's compatible with ecoinvent and all the other libraries in SimaPro. It includes 16 midpoint categories, as well as normalization and weighting. There's going to be an upcoming webinar in March, more specifically about the PEF data as well as methods. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions about that. So stay tuned and look for an invitation to that webinar, and you can learn a lot more about this. We also added a new monetization method. This was developed by CE Delft. The environmental prices method is applicable to 2 geographies, both Dutch and European. And in this method, the environmental prices indicate a loss of economic welfare that occurs when each kilogram of pollutant finds its way into the environment. The method is based on midpoint level environmental prices, and the characterization is based on recipe. Next, the EPD method is a new version of the 2013 EPD method, which is what was previously, or still is previously in SimaPro. But this we added as a new method. It's to be used for the creation of environmental product declarations, which was published by the Swedish Environmental Management Council. Compared to the 2013 version, we have 2 new impact categories included: photochemical ozone formation, which is based on recipe, as well as water scarcity based on aware. So for our last new method, there's now a cumulative energy demand method using lower heating values. The default cumulative energy demand method is based on higher heating values, but sometimes people need to use lower heating values, so we added this here. And the values were based on data published by ecoinvent, as well as expanded on by us. So I know there's some PCRs which require using lower heating values, so specifically I know that'll be easier for some people to create EPDs that require this using this method. So that's it for the new methods, and we also have some method updates. Recipe 2016 was updated to include normalization and weighting factors, which I know everyone's been eagerly waiting for a while. So the method developers included the normalization sets for us to update, but not new weighting sets. So we implemented the older weighting sets from Recipe 2008, if that's something that you want to use. Other notable changes are that regional water scarcity factors are now included in the endpoint version. And again, we want to reiterate that Recipe 2016 is a new method, not an update of Recipe 2008, because there are some really major differences. So I wouldn't directly compare all the results, especially with regard to the resource categories. There's some big differences. So there's also some minor updates, cumulative energy demand, and in the aware methods, which basically just included adding some additional flows for any new flows or regions that are applicable to those methods. So that's it for the updated methods and data. Now I just want to discuss a little bit the updating procedure, since it's a big update from SimaPro 8 to SimaPro 9. Before you update your software to use SimaPro 9, we are requesting that you perform a database check to ensure that there's no issues in your database that will be carried over to SimaPro 9. And you don't have to do it right before you update. You can do it a few weeks before. You can do it today if you're not update in the next couple of weeks. I'll show you how to run that database check when I open up SimaPro in a minute. But if there are any errors that are reported, sometimes they can be repaired automatically, and SimaPro will prompt you to do that. If they cannot be repaired automatically, just contact your local support and we'll work on getting that fixed for you before you update to SimaPro 9. Also, we just want to remind you that once your database has been converted to SimaPro 9, you cannot use SimaPro 8 with it. So as usual, as we always recommend, create an update or create a backup file before you update, and one will also be created automatically for you as part of the update procedure. So next, after the database update, as we talked about earlier, majority of links will be replaced and your data will be updated to ecoinvent 3.5. But as we talked about earlier, a number of the processes from ecoinvent 3.4 may no longer be supported and are considered obsolete. Emilia touched on this earlier, but we often still get questions about why processes are obsolete and what needs to be done about these. So I just wanted to touch on this briefly. So some of the examples of why a process might be obsolete is that the technology has changed, or maybe it was split into multiple technologies. And most often it's the case that we saw earlier with geographies being split into multiple geographies. So we prepared a replacement file that contains all the direct one-to-one replacements. So if something's replaced with something very similar and it's just it's a different process, but it's similar enough that we can replace it on a one-to-one basis, this can be done automatically. And I'll show you, I prepared a really short example just to show you how simple this is. Also, for the ones that do not have a one-to-one replacement, as we saw in the example earlier, we use that correspondence file to create a shorter, more condensed list of the processes that cannot be replaced, the obsolete processes that do not have a one-to-one replacement. So you can download it from us. I mean, you can use the correspondence file too, but this contains that exclusively. And so I just have that listed here. We have, same as we saw in Emilia's correspondence file, it's just a little simpler since it only contains those processes that don't have a one-to-one replacement and why. And as you can see, if you look down the left here, most of them are global processes that are split into multiple geographies. And you can see her example of the aluminum hydroxide down here, split into 7 and why. So you can always reference this if you have a question of why a process was made obsolete and what you should consider replacing it with. So now I'm going to open up SimaPro and just show you a quick example of the obsolete process and how to run the database check. And I know we're running close on time, so I'll be quick about it. So first, for the database check, you want to go to File, Database Management, and then you press Check, and then you press OK, and you'll run the database check. And as it gives you a warning here, it can take a considerable amount of time, especially if you have a really big database or you're on the database server. So just know that you should give yourself some time to run the check. So that's before you perform the update while you're still in SimaPro 8. Once you complete the update, you can use the obsolete. You want to replace your obsolete processes if you have any. So I just created these demo processes here. They're just very simple. I created them for 2 different libraries. As you can see here, I have a solvent, I have graphic paper input, and a waste graphic paper process, and they're both the same. And so to use the replacement file, you go up to Tools, and you use Project to Library Link Manager. You select which project you want to use, which libraries, and then you move over to the Links tab, and you press Scan. And up here will pop up all of your links to libraries in your project that you have open. So these are not necessarily just the obsolete processes. If you have a lot going on in your project, you'll probably have a really long list of process names here. And again, this was just, as you saw, a really simple project, so that's why I only have a few here. And then you go down to here and press Import Replacements. And then these Excel files will be installed as part of the database installers. And so you just click whichever library. It will load the replacements and try to match if there are any. And you can repeat this process if, for whatever reason, you're using multiple system libraries in the same project. You're probably not, but in case you are, you can just load again. And you'll see that they popped up here on the right, and if there are any replacements that need to be made. And I created this demo specifically to show you how this works, of course. So it's very possible that you don't have any that need to be replaced. There are thousands of ecoinvent processes and only a few hundred that were made obsolete. So if you run this and nothing comes up in this replace name column, you're all set and you're good to go and you don't have to worry about it. But likely you may have a few pop up. So if you do, you press replace. Do you want to replace the links? Click yes. It will update these for you. Successfully replaced. And then if you open up your process, you'll see the turpentine replaced the solvent and the ROW process replaced the other geography that was listed. I think it was the European, or it was a European plus, what was that? Well, both of them, you see it's replaced and you're all set. So if you're still getting any messages about obsolete processes, you can replace any of those links manually or reference that other Excel file. To be clear, if you aren't getting any messages about obsolete processes, you don't need to worry about this step and you should be all set to keep working. And with that, I am going to pass it back over to Ruiz. And I think you guys are still muted again.
Thanks again, Paula. Yeah, indeed, we were muted. I want to thank you for finishing on time. We do have a bunch of questions, so if you don't mind to hang on a few minutes, maybe we can answer. A few of them. We did get a lot of questions about the EF method and the PEF data, so maybe I can address that first. So indeed, with the SimaPro 9 release, we are offering an adapted EF method, and that method you can use in combination with other data libraries. The original EF method will be provided with the PEF secondary data sets. That will be out as a separate database, I think, in April. And at the beginning, I don't think everybody's eligible to access the data. It's only people who have been, for example, involved in certain projects. So you have to kind of pay attention to the terms and conditions before you access the data, but it will be available in April, and we will also have a follow-up webinar specifically on that topic and discussing who can use it, what you can do with it, why is it important for you, so to follow. Are there also lots of questions about the if SimaPro 9 has already been released? So yes, we released it today. We release in batches, so not everybody gets an update notification today, but you should get it over the next week, hopefully. So updating from SimaPro 8 to 9 is free of charge if you have a valid service contract. So you don't have to pay anything extra for that. It's part of the service. And there are also, maybe Emilia, you can answer this question, if there are additions, if there will be more data coming regarding Tunisia, other than the electricity mix and irrigation.
Tunisia?
Yes.
In 3.5 or 3.6, definitely not 3.5, and I don't think 3.6 we are adding data to Tunisia specifically.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And another maybe related question was, how can somebody submit requests to ecoinvent for data that you could consider for future inclusion?
That's a really good. Well, there's the possibility of doing that on the forum, but I think it's more efficient if you send us a mail to support. And we really consider that. We have our what we call the wish list, and we really consider that when we are doing updates or trying to set projects. So it's really useful if you, the users, contact us and tell us about data needs or data gaps they are experiencing. We might have not realized.
Yeah, we have a few more questions for you. One question is about nanoparticles. Will ecoinvent plan to collect any data on those?
On nanoparticles, yeah. I mean, it's not on the plans for 3.6. I would say so. You should not expect that on 2019.
No.
But after that, it is something that it's of course on our perspectives, I would say.
Yeah. Somebody from the United States, I think, is from Michigan State University. Angela is asking whether you will include more data on natural rubber and polymeric materials like SBS for asphalt applications.
Yeah, we are enriching. Yeah, I believe rubbers, but it's again, if I can say so, for 3.7, so it's not for 3.6. 3.6 is already this summer, but 3.7 is next summer.
Yep.
So yeah, we are working on that direction, but not in 3.6.
Yeah. Some people have asked about the update procedure. Of course, when we send out the emails with the link to update, we include update instructions, and they include all the details needed to perform, for example, the replacement. Replacement procedure is such that if you have any replacements, it's clearly shown how many. If you don't have any replacements, it will show that too. You can manually add replacements, and if there are problems with the Excel file, you will receive an error message.
And a question to you, Emilia, if the data sets of the World Food LCA database have been made available in ecoinvent?
So there's a part of the data from the World Food database that is available through ecoinvent. It's all related to crop production, etc. There's the other part more related to food processing or animal husbandry, which has not. And what is now functioning in the World Food database is accessible independently, but together with an ecoinvent license. So you need to have an ecoinvent license to access the World Food database, but the World Food database is an independent satellite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was another question about the availability of Exiobase 3, and Michiel, maybe you can tell.
Exiobase is an input-output database, and we're happy to say that we'll soon release it. How soon? I think it will be April, but it will be available soon. We're finalizing the database now with the latest checks and documentation issues. So everybody will receive an update mail about that as well if you have a valid service contract.
And that also will be a separate, that won't be included as the default update. That's going to be a separate download, which you can choose to import because it's a pretty large database and not necessarily everyone wants it. So it will be an optional download for people.
It's opposite to the PEF database. It will be available as a separate database with separate method because then it is PEF compliance. You need to keep it separate from the current SimaPro database. Exiobase can be imported in your normal SimaPro database.
Okay, I'd like to wrap up actually. Yes. So I'm afraid if we didn't answer your question, we'll hopefully get back to you by email. Sorry it took a bit longer than planned, but I'm very happy that it was interactive and that a lot of questions came our way. Feel free to follow up by email if you have any additional questions you didn't think of. I will repeat that you do not get the slides, but you will get a recording of this webinar in your email tomorrow. And that's it. Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Michiel, for this interesting session. And look out for more invitations for in the future. Thank you so much.
Have a nice day.